We own the information. It's our information. It's not law enforcement. It's not city owned information. So that is how we are able to keep it anonymous versus if the law enforcement gets it, if you call in, it's now public record. And that's how it kind of all started. Funny.
Yeah, Brii, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm super excited to be talking to you about this. I talk to a lot of law enforcement people, and at the heart of the law enforcement in Idaho is community participation. And Crime Stopper Idaho is at the heart of that participation in that because of the way our Constitution is written, people have the right to face their accusers in court. And defense attorneys can go after, even if I call in, say, an anonymous tip to Eagle Police Department, the person, if they got arrested, could say like, hey, who called you? And if, say, it's my neighbor or something of consequence, I'm like, I really can't have this person know that it was me that called them. I'm kind of in a pickle, right? Because if there's a defense attorney, they could really dig and potentially find out. But Idaho Crime Stoppers is the only truly anonymous source for law enforcement tips in the state of Idaho.
Correct. Because we are our own entity and a 501(c)(3), a nonprofit, and we're our own thing outside of law enforcement. We aren't a government agency. The rules don't apply like they do to the law enforcement. We own the information. It's our information. It's not law enforcement. It's not city owned information. So that is how we are able to keep it anonymous versus if the law enforcement gets it, if you call in, it's now public record. And that's how it kind of all started.
Okay, so walk me back through. So first off, you're the president of the board for Idaho Crime Stoppers.
Correct.
Walk me through the process you go through if somebody calls in and why and how it's anonymous.
Yeah.
And how you anonymize it, in fact, as well. And help me understand how you got to this position.
Perfect.
So let's just start with the process, I guess.
Perfect. Okay. So as far as the process goes, we have a phone number, 208-343-COPS, which most people know what that is and have heard of it. They don't realize that there's a nonprofit behind that phone number. So that is who Crime Stoppers of Southwest Idaho is. We were previously Boise area Crime Stoppers, and then that transitioned to Crime Stoppers of Southwest Idaho. So we have the phone number, we have our website, we have a P3 app, the app you can download that just has a fillable form, and all that information is collected, and then the tipster's given in a number. So they're assigned a 236 blah, 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 blah. And some form of, mixed up number that is specific to that tip. And then once we have that information, we take that, provide it to whichever law enforcement agency it's applicable to, then they utilize that information to their advantage. And then if they arrest somebody, felony arrest, then we can offer reward up to $1,000 to the tipster. And so all that communication is done through their tip number. So we never have names, we never have phone numbers. Our call center is out of Texas, 24/7. You can call 343-COPS, and they have no record. They can't call the number back. They have zero idea of who's calling in, and that's the way that we are able to keep it anonymous. It's all strictly done by the person's tip number, by the tipster's tip number, and then if they're given a reward, they're notified either through their web, the mobile platform, that there's a tip available, and then when they pick up, or that there's a reward available, I apologize. And when they pick it up, they just use that number to pick it up. But there are a lot of people that worry about retribution and, not being able to contact law enforcement without being subpoenaed or without being called to testify. And then, the person finding out who, provided the information.
How did this all get going? Because I wasn't even familiar with the Fifth Amendment. I believe it's the Fifth Amendment, right? That people have a right to face their accuser.
Fifth Amendment's right to remain silent.
Fifth,
isn't it?
plead the fifth. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some, listen, I'm not a constitutional attorney, but there is an aspect of the Constitution that guarantees our right to face our accusers. I was not familiar with that until I started looking into your program, which is how I was so taken by it. How did this program get started in Idaho?
Yeah. So in Albuquerque, New Mexico, there was a detective that was trying to solve a case at a school, at a college campus. And he just knew that the public, somebody out there knew what was going on, but nobody wanted to call and, be the face of giving that information. And he was like, there has to be a way for us to get this information without putting somebody's face in the spotlight. So he worked with his team, got a phone, basically created a separate line and guaranteed anonymity. And then people started calling and they were able to solve this crime. They had run out. They had exasperated every single tip, every lead. They were at a complete dead end. And as soon as they provided this option, then people started calling and they were able to end up solving it. And so that was about the same. Shortly after that, Crime Stoppers of Southwest Idaho started. We're about a little over 40 years old from when we started. And the whole thing is that, again, there's no other way for somebody in the community to provide information, remain anonymous, and not, have to worry about retribution.
This podcast is brought to you by MTU Studios. If you're looking to start a podcast or need content for your business or personal use, content of any type, please reach out to MTU Studios. MTUstudios.com. We'd love to help. Man, that's wild.
Yeah.
How successful has Idaho Crime Stoppers been?
Yeah. So as a program as a whole, like I said, we've a little over 40 years. We're approaching 20,000 total tips. And again, those are dispersed, mainly throughout the Treasure Valley. We do get some stuff for, northern Idaho, and that's my goal long term is to get it to be, Crime Stoppers of Idaho. Right now it's Southwest Idaho. So we pretty much deal with Canyon County and Ada County, a little bit of Twin. And so the biggest thing is collecting all of the information and getting it out to those agencies and assisting them. We know that they're going to solve crime with or without us. We are so fortunate to live in a safe community with amazing law enforcement. Our biggest thing is just being an extra resource and an extra tool in their tool belt that they can utilize to come into a situation and have the most information as possible, which, to set them up for success when they're approaching, a situation.
Yeah, I was actually speaking with Chief Ingram about this previously, and he was saying he knew about it from his time in LA, and then up here, he's like, it's fantastic because essentially we get this distilled portion of information, and then we can act on it. We obviously have to find our own evidence, and but you don't have to just like guess, right? And again, he was saying the exact same thing, that they get information from Crime Stoppers that they likely wouldn't get if it weren't anonymous, because it is really impactful. And you recognize once people start calling in, if they're calling in, there could be instances where a business owner calls in and is like, hey, my business partner is breaking the law. I don't know how to stop them. I can't be identified in this, but like, I need this person, like somebody needs to take action. And just hearing that, it's like, wow, man, there's a wide swath of concern. It's not just, a concerned neighbor, turning in another neighbor or something like that. But there are all kinds of problems within communities and within the legal field and law enforcement field where people want to help. They're just too worried to get engaged, or the retribution aspect of it, where it's like, oh my God, if this person finds out, it's a problem. I actually turned somebody in once. I will tell you, it did not work out well for me. It was so like 6th grade. Okay. I'm going to school. All right. Now look, I had to cross train tracks, right? It's like this overpass, and I'm crossing the train tracks
in the snow, and uphill both ways.
No, it was just Northern California. It was wintertime though. Anyway. And the BART train, which is, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, is going by, and we're crossing the overpass, me and Jeff Rubendahl, little guy, a lot of freckles. Anyway, and Noel Wickham is in the middle of the overpass, okay? Noel Wickham, huge guy, no freckles. And he has a stick, and he's like, watch this. And we're like, what's going on? So right as the BART train passes, he throws this stick over the overpass, and it hits the front of the BART train, right? Like, his timing was impeccable. And we're like, oh my God, right? In 6th grade, and BART train, brakes hit real hard, and we run off to class. Well, like, I had nothing to do with it. 6th grade Matt is just like, dun, 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 dun. So I go to class, and then within about a half an hour, fire chief shows up, police chief shows up. All of a sudden, they're at the school, and over the intercom, it's like, hey, so if anybody with any information about what happened to the BART train, come to the office. Jeff Rubinall and I lock eyes, raise our dumb little hands. We're like, yeah, so we know. So we go to the office, and we're like, hey, they talk to us individually, and like, this is what I saw, blah, 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 blah. And then we leave. All right. And they're like, there's a reward for the people that come forward. We're like, okay, great. But like, we should just tell, because, 11-year-old Matt thinks it's a great idea. Well, turns out, one, the fact that we raised our hands and then Noel Wickham got in trouble, Noel Wickham knew that it was us, right? Tiny Freckle Jeff and me. Not a great situation to be in, because Noel Wickham was huge. And the reward we got, no joke, was a $5 check that we had to split. So they wrote 11-year-old Matt a $2.50 check. And now the biggest kid in school was pissed at me because he got in trouble. And after that, I was like, this is ridiculous. Even I knew it was ridiculous. Like, this is a crock. Like, I'm going to get crushed by this dude, and all for like feeling good about myself and like, you should have given me, like, I would have been happier if you gave me like a citizenship award or something. Right. Like, get some of that dumb paper out there.
Trophy.
Like, yeah, or just give me a sticker, like give me the gold star sticker or something. Anyway, so the problem with retribution is real. And it was something that from then on out, I really had to consider whether or not I wanted to participate in bringing, things to light. Cause snitches get stitches. So,
right.
Yeah. But like,
which, people, I mean, I feel like, sometimes people, will say that about the program or, shed it a little bit in a negative light that we're providing, anonymous information. But I mean, truly at the end of the day, like, we all want safe streets. We all want a safe community. We want our kids to be safe when they go to school. And just knowing that we have this opportunity to assist law enforcement and getting them this information, I mean, it makes me feel good to be able to provide that. And we, we've also are in schools. In years past, we've had a really strong partnership within the schools, giving students the opportunity to be able to utilize Crime Stoppers in that situation. Like you were just talking about, but we've also had we had one where somebody turned on somebody for, smoking marijuana in the parking lot at school. And the SRO found out, reached out, tried to bust the individual. The individual was like, well, I do, but not today. So you're not going to find anything. So they end up doing a search. They end up finding tobacco products, underage, notify the parents. The parents were able to search and take look further into the information in their home, and actually found a suicide letter and prevented a suicide because of it. So it's like, not always is it, somebody just trying to rat somebody out. But I mean, we've done some really good things in the community to help protect people, even from themselves, which is real, again, like, all these little things help me be so re-energized about the program. Like, it's so amazing that, the information we have.
Okay, how did you become the president? This is not a slight at all, but like, how did you become the president of Crime Stoppers?
Well, I was my favorite word, voluntold. I was voluntold to be the secretary. So I sat in and I took notes, or took the minutes for the board. And we just had some shuffles with the board, and I'll be honest, it kind of became stagnant. I mean, we kind of got to this point where we weren't really growing. We kind of were just, getting by. We didn't have any money. We didn't really have as much of a buy-in from the community. We kind of weren't as, our relationships with law enforcement weren't as strong. I think the biggest thing is, we're not here to compete with law enforcement. That we can't do it without them, and they can do it without us. And so that was the biggest thing, is them realizing that we're not here for for competition. Like, we're solely here to be an extra resource, an extra tool in their tool belt. So when the board kind of shuffled, it was like a few guys that had been there for a really long time left. And I was still there and was like, you know what? I love this program. I love what we're doing. I felt like it was, hugely beneficial to the community. And so I stepped up and became the president and of the board. And I was actually kind of co-chairing it with another gal. And then she ended up leaving. And then right around all of that time, it was a different structure. We had a liaison, that kind of a program coordinator, and I really just kind of ran the board meetings and we voted on rewards. It was pretty, laid back. And then in 2020, everything kind of changed, like everything in the world with COVID.
Right.
We had a coordinator that was out of Boise Police. And when that he was there, and then they kind of decided that, they were having some restructuring going on within their agency, and wanted us to really kind of diversify ourselves and have everybody, all the law enforcement surrounding agencies to be participating, not just kind of Boise fronting it for the other cities. And so we had in 2021, it literally shook our program. We totally took it, dumped it out, laid everything out on the table, what worked, what didn't work, and what do we need to do.
Because you were essentially trying to go from a program that was sponsored by and essentially serving the Boise PD, but also getting sucked into the surrounding areas. So Boise PD was funding certain aspects of your program, but it was being utilized by other departments. And so essentially in 2021, you're like, all right, look, if we become the separate entity, what has to happen? Like because you have zero waste, right? Like you don't have time and energy, especially if you lose the support, financial support of a large police department like Boise. You essentially just say, okay, look, what do we have? What works? How can we improve on all this and trim off everything that is not yielding like very relevant results?
Correct. And so we had gotten some, our first step was making sure law enforcement wanted us, right? Because like I said, they're going to do their job with or without us. And if they don't want us, like we're beating a dead horse here.
Sure.
Like, what's the point of continuing to run into a brick wall? Like that doesn't make, didn't make sense for us to go from, we literally had less than, $1,000 in our bank account to be paying out rewards and funding a 24/7 call line and the website and the P3 software that people could, like, we didn't even have the funds to run the program at that point. And now no one to run the program. And we were like, what do we do? And so we had, met with everybody and really, I was so energized after meeting with the chiefs and the sheriffs, and we had so much support. Chief Clifford has been with Sheriff Clifford now. He was the chief in Eagle when we first had met with him. But now that he has just been a phenomenal support for us since, all of this. And so we had met with him. We had met with Huff in Nampa. We had met with Pastor Chia. Actually, it was Chief Levy at the time in Meridian. And then Sheriff Bartlett was the sheriff then. So we kind of met with all these people and got a lot of really good positive feedback of, what they wanted to see out of the program. Because again, it's for them, it's for our community, but it's really for law enforcement to gain and have as much information when they walk into a situation as possible.
Right. It's only for the community if it works for law enforcement.
Correct.
Right. Like you can have a program, quote, for the community, but if it's ineffective at actually producing results, then it's just a nothing.
Right. Then we're just a collection of information that goes nowhere. Correct.
Right.
Like you called in for nothing. Yeah.
Right.
So after we met with them, we had been given some information from a few other people. We were just kind of brainstorming, like, what do we do?
Right.
And the consensus was that we create a service agreement for the cities and counties, and we basically contract our services with them. And so that is what funds all of our administrative stuff. We have a contract with the city, and then from there we use our partnerships with local businesses, community donations, individuals. We get a ton of like Facebook donations or PayPal donations, or we've put on events where we collect donations, and any of that money goes towards paying our rewards. So
how many rewards did you pay last year?
Last year we paid out 24. We had 24 arrests that led to a reward being due, but not everybody collects their reward.
So some people are just like, look, I appreciate that this is here.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
A lot of people.
And to get the reward, they have to be making a successful arrest for a felony, right?
Felony arrest, correct. We still give all the information for misdemeanors. And at this point in time, we only pay out on felonies. But, you never know when a misdemeanor will turn into a felon.
So you're really like roughly every 2 weeks, Crime Stoppers is assisting in a felony arrest.
Yeah. I mean, and
That's
obviously,
wild.
It ebbs and flows for sure. I mean, we see.
But just essentially on average, it's roughly. I mean, these are real. Like, what kind of crimes are people informing on? Like, what are you helping the police department and sheriff's department, sheriff's office rather, identify? So, I mean, as most people see, anytime law enforcement is putting out a press release, right? Like, there's one right now that their Boise police is looking for a guy that was committing robberies in a breaking into women's homes. They can't track him down. America's Most Wanted's about to do a video on him, and there's, lots of buzz around him. So they're putting it out. Nampa puts us out on so many things, breaking into cars, drugs, theft. We've had tips on child abduction cases that we've helped with. So, I mean, really, it's kind of everything. It truly a lot of drugs, which I don't think I realized that there was so much drug activity going on in our community as there is. So, and you're like a lifelong Idahoan, multi-generation. Born and raised, yes. Born and raised here. So, yeah, it's interesting to see all the information that, what's going on out there. But we've had road rages. We've had, we've had so many different, we've had fentanyl pills taken off the streets. We had almost, a situation was like almost 15,000 fentanyl pills that they were able to get off the streets. I mean, we've had... That was all through Crime Stoppers? Yeah. 15,000 fentanyl. From a single person. Like a single situation. Like a single arrest. That is wild. Yeah. That's so many deaths there. Yeah. We're approaching $1 million. And I'll be honest, with all of this transition, we're still growing our process, and all these stats, they're just going to continue to get more, accurate and more efficient and all these things. But right now we have over $1 million worth of property, cash, and weapons and drugs that have been seized in the life of our program. Good for you that guys. We've assisted with. Yeah. So, and that's just this particular area, roughly the Treasure Valley area. Yes, that's just Crime Stoppers of Southwest Idaho. Yeah. And there's over 1,200, which I think is crazy too. There's over 1,200 Crime Stoppers programs in the country. So Crime Stoppers USA, they have all these, a little essentially lodges or branches or chapters. So, Yep, and we all, participate in Crime Stoppers USA. And, I mean, you go to big cities, Detroit, Houston, these big cities that have, their Crime Stoppers program, they have, all the way down to, their police tape has Crime Stoppers on it. Their police cars are wrapped in Crime Stoppers. And that's one thing that's, so exciting for us is we know, where the program can go and where we want it to go because it's out there. We're so, so lucky to live in, the Treasure Valley that truly is very safe. But we're growing. And I think that's the biggest thing is community awareness. Like I said, I was born and raised here. And before I came on, I don't even think I knew what it was. I'd heard the phone number maybe, but I didn't know the details of what the program did and that it was a nonprofit and, all of that. I didn't know any of that, let alone anybody that's coming in, which it's interesting that Ingram, that he said that he learned, that he knew about it from being in LA. Right. Right. And he said they got valuable information
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's not something that I even knew about. And I've been talking to, sheriffs, chiefs, and like nobody has kind of mentioned it.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about community participation and buy-in with law enforcement. And nobody's like, by the way, there's this way that you can participate and contribute totally anonymously, right? They haven't said that. I'm not like trying to dumpster on them, but it's one of those things that it's surprising when you realize like, oh, this is a national program to really help people contribute in a defensible manner.
And I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, like I said, in 2021, we had such a shakeup of the program. It's really allowed us to just like launch, right? And so for so long, for a year or so, 2 years, we were like, okay, do we have a program? Are we going to get the city's buy-in? Does law enforcement want us? How are we going to, continue to have a program to push, right? Now we're like in such a good position. Our relationships with law enforcement are so strong. They're constantly utilizing us. They're constantly putting us out there. The back and forth. I mean, Nampa, I would say, is probably one of our best like examples. They put us on everything. And that's the other thing. I mean, we can be a resource, but if law enforcement isn't using us to our full capacity, we have to, continue to strengthen those bonds and those relationships. And that's really kind of where we're at in the last, 6 months or so. We're like, okay, we're on solid ground. Like, we're here. We're not going anywhere. We've kind of breathed life into the program again. So now what? How do we get the community? That is like our number one thing, is community awareness. How do we get people to know that this is a resource? How do we get, and even law enforcement, we're putting together cards that will have a QR code and our phone number, that if, a sheriff or if an officer or detective speaking to someone and they can tell that they probably have some information that they don't want to share, they can give them this as a resource and say, if you change your mind or come, think of anything, but then they're anonymous. Then they can come through, utilize the Crime Stoppers, phone number and platform, get that same information, but then, truly it's anonymous.
Right. And you just don't have to worry about all of the fallout.
Yeah.
You mentioned where you see the program going. Where do you see this program going?
Oh man, we have so many exciting ideas. I mean, we sit and talk about it all the time. So, the one exciting thing that I feel like from when I started, I really wanted to bring somebody on. Like, so backstory, like I do this all volunteer. Like I have a full-time job, and this is all volunteer hours that I've, been doing on the board, as well as everybody that's on our board right now. We have about 6 of us on the board. And so our biggest thing was like, okay, we need somebody that can help us, with our community awareness campaign. So we were able to hire a marketing coordinator and an administrative coordinator so that she could help us grow our social media, get the community aware, start doing events where the community can be aware of who we are. With that, like next month we're going to Nampa's putting on a police academy, a citizens police academy thing, and so we'll be speaking at that and getting the community aware there. And we're growing our partnerships and re-strengthening everything after COVID. When COVID hit, like we were on KTVB all the time. We were on 101.9 The Bold all the time. We were in these platforms constantly. And then when COVID hit and everyone like dispersed and distanced themselves, it was like, okay, now we have to like figure out how to like get all those things back together. But we've changed a little bit too. So it's like, what does that look like now? Like, how do we continue to spread this awareness and grow all these relationships, strengthen these relationships, and just let everybody know, like, we've been here for 40 years and we're not going anywhere, So I would say long-term too, like I would love to see, it statewide. Idaho's not quite big enough that we need like separate like a different main, entities, I guess.
Sure.
Like I would love to have like, be Crime Stoppers of Idaho, and then just have like subsidiary like boards or like
Sure.
little groups, in North Idaho, Kootenai County area. There is there's another Crime Stoppers program that's over in Bonneville County, and kind of just all come together to where we are servicing all of Idaho. So that's definitely one. Another goal that I have is we would love to see there's other Crime Stoppers programs that have utilized legislation to get it to where when a criminal is caught and they face the judge, and the judge can actually ask them to pay a donation to Crime Stoppers as part of their restitution. So really getting the criminals to fund the program. Essentially.
God, man, that's a great one.
Yeah. So, and we were working on all that and COVID hit. So again, like there's so many things that we were, we every single day, like we have great ideas. And I we would love to have more people that are excited about the program. There's like, you can't talk to anybody that's like, oh, I want, I want scarier streets.
Right. I want more crime.
I want more crime.
Yeah.
I love crime. Yeah. So, I know like that, but also people don't realize, or they're not as vested in it, I guess, until it affects them.
Right.
Okay.
And the interesting thing with the Treasure Valley being such a home for transplants, and people escaping riskier places, Seattle, San Francisco, Portland. My God, the war zone of Portland. Oh my God, I saw this insanely funny thing saying that essentially In-N-Out left Oakland to open a new branch in the Gaza Strip because it was safer. Side note, when I fly back to California, I fly into Oakland. Okay. And there is an In-N-Out, in fact, near Oakland, near the Oakland airport, near this Home Depot. And my wife's family lives back there, so we have to go back for these things. So we go back, we fly into Oakland, get this car, and the rental car person, no joke, looks at us. It's like 5 o'clock. They're like, "Are you stopping anytime soon?" And my wife is like, What do you mean? She's like, "Don't stop." She's like, "Don't stop where?" She's like, "If you're stopping for gas, if you're stopping for somewhere else, keep driving. Don't stop around here." So we're like, "Well, we got to get food. Like, we got little kids. We just got off a plane." I'm like, "Okay." So we go to this In-N-Out. Now, mind you, I had gone to Berkeley. My wife and I had kicked around Oakland and Berkeley after we graduated for a little bit of time. I don't like those areas, but like we didn't have any money. Right. So like we had to wait, just fucking wait and survive. So we knew there was an In-N-Out. Like, okay, let's just go to In-N-Out real fast, get our In-N-Out fix and move on. So we go to In-N-Out. All of the street lights in the parking lot are shot out. So it's black. Oh my gosh. Right. And my wife literally was like, "I'm not stopping the car." We're not stopping. So I jump out of the rental car, right? It's like this big old, I was like, "Honey, don't slow." And if somebody jumps in front of you, run them over, right? Because here are my kids in this car. Right. And we didn't want to go through the drive-thru because we didn't want to stop and wait. So I go inside and run inside. As I'm standing there, no joke, somebody comes in and is like, "Hey, this car just got broken into. Do you want to call the cops?" It's literally just smash the window, grab stuff and leave. And the In-N-Out employee's like, "Yeah, I'm trying to get some fries." Yeah. And there's nothing to be done. You're like, nothing to be done. So I get the food and run, throw it in the window and jump in the window, my legs hanging out. It's she just peels out. But it's interesting because people move here. Right. Like you're saying, you weren't necessarily aware of how many drugs and things are going on. I have not lived somewhere where there was such a push from law enforcement to get community buy-in, to get, tips, to educate people. But it's almost like, well, yeah, dummy, of course it's like that here because it's safer here, and it can very easily become less safe here. And the reason that it's safe and continues to be safe in spite of an incredible growth spurt and changing populations and all of these things is because you have these law enforcement agencies that are really committed to continuing to educate people and get community buy-in to keep this place really, really safe. But at the heart of it is you have to educate people that there are problems and then get them to participate. Right. Yeah. No. And I we have great law enforcement, right? They're phenomenal here. So, you can contact them and they're going to be wonderful and they're going to help you. But at the same time, we just by getting in front of what it could turn into, what this valley could become, right. We're not slowing down growth anytime. So, everybody that's coming here,
why not be in front of it and let everybody know that this is, what we are and who we are, and law enforcement isn't going to mess around. They're not going to be okay with, those types of things happening in our community.
Right. And there's also, with people moving in from, say, like California, right? Like obviously, and Oregon and other places that have legalized some level of narcotics and drugs, and, marijuana is always the classic one. It's really interesting seeing the conflict that people here, especially within the law enforcement community and then the population, are kind of experiencing, because you just have such principal conflict, which is you want less government, right? That's generally a conservative principle. You want smaller government. You don't want people telling you what you can and can't do. But at the same time, marijuana is not legal in Idaho, and it's the government saying, hey, you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't use all of these things. I was talking to a law enforcement agent just on Monday that was talking about how it all started in California in the 90s when they made the Compassionate Use Act. I think that was the medicinal marijuana. So he's like, all of a sudden, every gangster we pulled over had a medicinal card because they got doctors on the payroll, and then essentially just started getting this medicinal marijuana that they then turned around and sold or utilized themselves. And it just snowballed from there. So it's like you have these conflicts between conservative principles, people moving in that are, terrified of where they moved from, law enforcement trying to educate people, but like not stepping on anybody's rights, because that's obviously the other thing. You want effective law enforcement, but you also want to honor the Constitution, and you don't want to betray people and make their life worse in the name of obvious. Like, you don't want everybody to relinquish their rights and their guns and their all of this stuff because, quote unquote, it'll make crime easier to solve. It's like, that's not an option either.
Right.
And there's no consensus that even works, right? Like, obviously the law-abiding citizens give up their firearms and the criminals do not. Like, that's a very classic conflict that people have. So it is really interesting getting the education that I have received talking to everyone and people like you, where it's like, look, crime is a real issue, right? Like there are real problems in this area. And if the community doesn't step up and participate, there's no guarantee that crime will be kept at bay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're always looking for people that have that same, mentality and fire behind, wanting to keep the community safe. We're always looking for board members and businesses to partner with us,
Explain that to me. What does that mean? Businesses to partner with you?
Yeah, so we have sponsorship tiers. Jackson's is one of our major sponsors. We've assisted them quite a few times. And they, we have different tiers that basically, you can come to our events, we can, advertise for you, give you shout outs, things like that. But I mean, really at the end of the day, it's businesses that they want our community safe. They want to continue to assist in our program, being able to pay out these rewards. And so, yeah, businesses can be a sponsor and help pay out rewards for, typically I'd say our rewards are typically, $250 to $600-700 is typically what we see. Obviously, $1,000 is an option.
Wait, I thought you only had one tier of payout. That it was like if you help in a felony arrest, then it's $1,000. You have lower tiers of
rewards? It all depends on it all depends. There's a calculator, right? Like Crime Stoppers USA provides a calculator that depending on who was arrested, how many drugs were seized, cash was received, how many arrests, they say they bust a house for one person with a warrant, but there was 4 people actually in there. That solves multiple warrants, right? So it's kind of like I would say more of a calculator than a tier, so everything's kind of worth certain points, and then the points all add up to dollars. So,
and I'm sorry, you may have mentioned already, how much have you paid out, like in total?
So we have paid out, last year we paid out, or I don't know, last year we had 24 tips, but total we've paid out almost $75,000 in our program, or we've approved $75,000 worth of rewards in the program's life. I would say last year was probably about, I'd say somewhere around $3,000 to $3,500.
And again, that's what you guys are paying out. That's not what you've approved, meaning, some people, again, just didn't participate in taking the reward.
No, so that's what we've approved. So that's gotcha. So that's what we voted on. We said this one was, this one gets 400, this one gets 500, this guy gets 450, not, tipster, this,
sure.
whatever. And then And then a lot of times community members are just giving information because they want to help the community. A lot of times people don't pick up their rewards. So they have about 90 days to pick them up. And then if they don't, they just get redeposited back into the reward account for the next guy.
How can people help if they want to help? Like, what are the options you have for participation?
So I think, biggest things, following us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, CrimeStoppers of Southwest Idaho. We have an Instagram. And then, sharing. We constantly are posting information about people we're looking for, or anybody, felons, people that have warrants. If there's crimes that, law enforcement needs assistance in solving, we post those. Really partner, sharing all that information. So following us on social media, we would, getting involved in the board. It's, we vote on rewards. You get to assist in the community. We do events for each of the cities, which is fun. Like our service agreement, we've done shred days. We've done been at the Eagles Farmer Market. We've done Eagle Fun Days. We've done, a few different events for different cities and counties each year. So getting to participate and get out into the community and talk about that. So really sharing it. I think the biggest thing is community awareness, letting people know who we are, what we do, and then people wanting to either be a sponsor as a business. We would love to, showcase your business, as well as, give us the opportunity to continue to pay out rewards and help assist in they're assisting in law enforcement, keeping our streets safe, and then joining the board. We're always looking for board members and people that are actively, interested in helping keep the community safe, throw out new ideas. Like fresh blood's always good to, keep a program growing and thriving. So,
not to be dark, and we've talked about a lot of things. What is happening with crime in the Treasure Valley? Is it increasing or decreasing? I mean, we obviously have increased population significantly.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have great law enforcement. I think people are pretty aware that, it won't be tolerated here. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we're seeing it increasing. I mean, very minimally, just because of population, probably. But really, I mean, our law enforcement does a really good job of keeping our streets safe. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for what you're doing for the Treasure Valley in Southwest Idaho.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in and explaining today. Again, it's not a program that I was even aware of until about a month ago. I think it's so valuable. So hopefully we can connect again.
Absolutely.
And just kind of talk more about what you guys are doing, because your plans sound fantastic.
Thank you. We're so excited. Thank you for having us on.
Of course. This podcast is brought to you by MTU Studios. If you're looking to start a podcast or need content for your business or personal use, content of any type, please reach out to MTU Studios. MTUstudios.com. We'd love to help.